Chaos, starring Neurotoxin and Joe Ryan. Edge of Chaos is a free-flowing discussion, occasionally dealing with mature topics. Alright, welcome back everybody to the Edge of Chaos. I am Joe Ryan, here as always with Neurotoxin.
How you doing?
Pretty well. And I guess, what, you want to do, have this be the SmackDown edition of Edge of Chaos?
Well, I feel like it's already been the SmackDown edition. Not out of Edge of Chaos, but these last couple of weeks. It's just, we need to just kind of do the promo at this point where, The Rock stands up and does his little victory speech about these guys. And,
but who's smacking who is, I guess, is my question.
Well, and my answer would be, at this point, it's libertarians smacking psychotic fundamentalist Tea Party theocrats, which is interesting because there was a time when those two elements were together in the Tea Party.
I love when funnies get slapped. Okay, I'm in.
Yeah, so you can do the promo for that, right, Joe? You got your actor's hat on today. So,
little jabroni, you think you impressed The Rock with your Bible thumping? You're Jesus loving. Well, The Rock says this.
Yeah, exactly.
You may have the rapture plan, but The Rock has, and I'll stop there because I think
it's going to get a little too graphic here. But the thing is, talk about graphic. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about, the first place where I feel like Libertarian SmackDown is actually more in the future than the past, Texas. Rick Perry, and we're going to make a celebrity out of Rick Perry on this show.
Oh,
but
God.
This is just, and it's funny because when he ran for president, and I didn't really know a whole lot about him, I mean, I was never really in favor of his policies, but I was like, all right, he's just another Republican. He's not so bad. I mean, he's an idiot.
And I declared to you that he might single-handedly change the race, and I was right in the wrong way.
Yeah, he did. Anyway,
spectacular disaster is what happened.
Oh yeah, I mean, he was the Rudy Giuliani of that.
I didn't know is that he made George W. Bush look like a Mensa patient.
It's Mensa member, but yeah. The thing is, but now at this point, see, that's always kind of been my view on him for the last, I guess, 2 years, that he's kind of an idiot, but he's not such a bad guy. But now I'm just really starting to hate him. And this shit that's going on in Texas, for those who live under a rock, there was a political battle in the Texas state legislature about 4 or 5 months ago, I want to say, during the summer, where basically it was a Rick Perry suggested law that they didn't outlaw abortions. This is a big misconception. Abortions are still legal in Texas. What they did was a regulatory restriction that any clinic that performs abortions has to have a physician present that has admitting privileges at a hospital.
Within 30 miles of the clinic.
Within 30 miles away.
That's a key part of it.
Right. Now, this is a big problem because a lot of the rural hospitals in Texas, there's hospitals everywhere, but a lot of the rural hospitals will not give a doctor admitting privileges if they perform abortions.
Right.
This is just activism. So they have to call the hospitals. I think they already have to have admitting privileges. It's just that the 30 miles is the change, but don't quote me on that. So these doctors fly out from a different city, and Texas is a big place. So they do like a 4-hour drive or a 1-hour flight to get somewhere to perform abortions for a day, but the hospital where they have admitting privileges is 4 hours away. So now with this law, it's literally there are places in Texas where you can't get an abortion unless you do the 4-hour drive. And then there's restrictions. You have to do the sonogram and all this bullshit. So you can't do it in one day either. So a lot of these poor women in rural areas that want to get an abortion, this is really making it difficult. Now, I'm not saying it's making it impossible because my personal opinion is if a woman wants to have an abortion, she's going to get one. I'm a social worker. I studied the psychology behind this. It's traumatic. It's painful. There's a lot of social stigma. If she's willing to go through all that, some bullshit regulation is not going to stop her.
And history has borne that out.
Oh yeah, the costs are just insane.
The pre-Roe v. Wade era, people were dying having them, and they knew the risk, and they did it anyway.
Right. So you're not only going to have coat hanger abortions in this case, though. You're just going to have people going to New Mexico, people going to Mexico, people going to the big cities, and actually. A former guest on our show, Agent of Change, is currently employed as a social worker in Texas, and she was telling me about this, that this is just, it's insanity what's going on there. There's actually nonprofits that are, well, she's in a big city, but there's nonprofits that are busing people from these rural areas to like Dallas-Fort Worth area or to Houston or to even to Mexico, because there's abortion clinics in Mexico that'll serve them. So this is insanity. And the reason this makes me hate Rick Perry is because this is not some theocratic, we're gonna stop the abortions because abortions are evil and they're murder. It's got nothing to do with that. Like I said, I don't really think it's gonna stop a single abortion. It's all corporatist profiteering, because Rick Perry's wife is, I forget exactly her title, but she's some major executive on a bunch of private hospital boards, private for-profit hospital boards. So all they're doing is they're bringing the abortion business to the big cities where they own the hospitals.
And that completely fits with Rick Perry's to this day.
Yeah.
You know, he's a big cronyist guy. That's his deal. Greasing all the palms, that's how he got elected. You know, he's connected with all the right power brokers in the state, all the people with deep pockets. And he's just, it's yet another reward. It's one of many. So, yeah, that's the plan. Look righteous on the one side for the evangelicals, and then grease the palm of the actual, power broker with the deep pockets on the other side. It's perfect. It's transparent, but most of his little schemes have been.
Yeah, he's too fucking stupid to even hide them until he's out of office. Like, as much as we dislike Bush Jr. here, most of the shit he didn't come out until the very end. Well, I guess Rick Perry is nearing the end of his tenure too. He doesn't really care, right. But yeah, I don't think he's running for president again.
I've been a lame duck. Hey, fuck it, I'm just going to go all out kind of mode. And he's had so much success. You can't argue with the guy's success. He's a moron, but he's
great. Yeah,
perfect for what he wanted to do and what those who put him there wanted him to do.
I think it kind of reflects poorly on Texas that how well these moron governors do there. I mean, George Bush,
totally. But and I think there's another part of this that we just kind of put this up on our site today. It was something that you had put up on your Facebook feed like earlier this week. This demographic map of America and how the various different cultures that settled it over the 200 some years we've been a country, how they've affected politics, policies, cultural values across different parts of America, and how it affects even today how we debate things, how the issues are seen, issues like gun control, issues like violence, issues like abortion, how they're seen and how that section of the population deals with them. And it's revealing because when you look at Texas, it's got 3 different swaths.
Actually, no, it's 4, I believe.
But what's interesting is most of the places you can't get abortions, it makes sense, are covered by the big red swath that indicates people that are very kind of evangelical types that would be for restricting abortion. Right. So,
but see, it's interesting to me because I feel like those people are being rolled. The evangelicals are just being used in this case. And actually, another thing I reposted earlier this week on Edge of Chaos from our friend Nick Sorrentino at Against Crony Capitalism is, well, he was more talking about Obamacare, but this works in both directions, is the Baptists and bootleggers syndrome, where you have some sort of religious or just any kind of ideological organization for Obamacare, be all the Obama groupies, we need healthcare for everybody, with zero understanding of like the empiricism behind it. And you have that, and then they hook up with somebody that basically profits off the regulation, off the restriction. So whether in Rick Perry's case, what's he doing? He's just bringing himself business away from where these people don't want it.
Right.
Or in the case of Obamacare, the healthcare cartels plus the groupies would be the question. That's obviously bootleggers referring to alcohol prohibition being the same thing. So that's what's going on here. And I feel like, first of all, one of the reasons Rick Perry's campaign fell apart for presidency is I feel like he could not catch on with the Tea Party to save his life. He tried. He tried very hard to play that element, and they're like, the fuck out of here.
But they correctly sniffed him out as a big business Republican.
Well, one, he's a moron. And, like I've said multiple times on this show, like it or hate it, Tea Party, whether they're evangelicals or libertarians, they're pretty well versed in politics. They're pretty good at vetting their candidates. They're pretty good at understanding who stands for what. They're pretty good at sniffing out your positions. Now, you may or may not agree with the positions the Tea Party wants, but they're difficult to lie to, is what I'm saying. And this guy is not exactly, like you said, the president of his Mensa chapter.
Well, you can't say you're for less government intrusion into private life and then be for something like this abortion debacle. You can't. It's completely opposite values. It is.
Right, but even with that, evangelicals might be on board with that because they're on board with some of the theocracy stuff. But there's just other things that he's done that haven't been palatable to them. So what I feel like is happening now, and if we remember only a year ago, with Ted Cruz's election to the Senate, the real brutal battle was in the primaries. And that was him versus David Dewhurst, Rick Perry's lieutenant governor.
Right.
So, and Rick Perry campaigned very heavily for Dewhurst,
Yes,
and he actually tried to push him through in the first round, and he fell like 2% short, and there was 5 guys. And he almost, if he had hit 50, there'd be no runoff. And then Ted Cruz beat him in the runoff. So now what's going on is you have Wendy Davis, who is the Democrat state senator that filibustered this shit and actually stopped. Well, she pushed it back, but she couldn't stop it.
Right.
Now she is running for governor against.
She is running against Rick Perry's hand-picked successor. He's the Attorney General, Greg Abbott. And so basically the idea there is that he's showing all of the various moneyed interests that put him there, that supported him, that he's rewarded, etc. This is my guy. I'm picking him out. He's from my team, and he'll just basically slide right into my chair, and nothing will change for you.
So did he call David Dewhurst and ask him how that worked out? I mean, this
Really?
is another old fat white guy that golfs with Rick Perry, and it's like he's to catch on. Hey, Texas is not on board with this anymore, and she's only trailing by 6%. And we're talking about a pro-choice woman Democrat running for governor in Texas, and she's trailing the Republican by 6%. This is not small.
And it bears mentioning that when the law was being debated, when she was doing the filibuster, she was leading the charge, and a lot of people descended on Austin at the time. It wasn't a small thing. It was probably the biggest demonstrations Austin has ever seen, according to some of the things I've read online just from people that live there. They're like, I've never seen so many people down here ever protesting anything. So it's pretty. There's a lot of people behind her. Yeah.
Yeah, she's very popular. And what I feel like and again, I haven't done the research on this. It's just purely my theory. Is Texas has a pretty significant libertarian element. I mean, if you look at again that map. There's a pretty, kind of red-leaning libertarian area that it covers the West Appalachian,
right,
or the Greater Appalachia. It's Kentucky's in there, Tennessee, so not like the Deep South, but more like the Central South states.
And this is kind of like Central and North,
right?
Sort of.
And if you look at where Ron Paul's district is, it's right in there too.
Right.
So that element is definitely not for this. They may be against abortions, but they see right through this shit. They see right through everything else Rick Perry has done. This is not just about the abortions. They see right through these old white assholes that golf with him that he keeps trying to push into other positions. And we already saw with Ted Cruz what happened with that. But, of course, Ted Cruz could pick up the evangelical vote. But nevertheless, I can see a lot of that element. And we're not talking, a majority. We're talking 7, 8, maybe 10% of the state. Well, maybe in Texas a little more like 10 or 12. Basically just switching over to the Democrats, saying, you know what, this time we're voting for the Democrat.
It's possible, and Texas is ballooning, for lack of a better word, and has been for a while. The recent election law change there was a pretty naked attempt to roll that back.
And that's another thing that a lot of libertarians and evangelicals don't think is cute. See, you would think
these are establishment Republican cutesy tricks, because people forget. Okay, I think Texas is this big, Republican bastion, but Houston has elected a Democrat mayor for the last 4 election cycles. San Antonio and Austin have had Democrat mayors since forever, and it's like Central Texas is very red, Dallas is very red, but there's a lot of places in Texas that are blue, and they're getting bluer. Part of it's the Latino influx. Which makes the voting law very relevant, because it disproportionately makes voting, if you weren't born in this country, even if you are a legal citizen, very hard compared.
Right, it's just right. And again, it's regulation abuse, just like the crap with the abortions is regulation abuse. And actually, what's been going on recently, the reason to bring this up is the federal court, actually a Bush Jr. appointee when he was president, not governor, judge, overturned this, and this is also up on our on Facebook.com/Age of Chaos. And then the appeals court in Louisiana, like the next day or 3 days later, turned it right back over. And it's like, what the hell? How do you do this in 3 days? Like, you can do that, you have the authority, but that's just judicial activism from the right, not the left, in my opinion. But this kind of thing, what they're doing, and what Rick Perry's doing, this gets music to my ears, is they're pissing away their base. Because, yeah, you have all the neocons, but that's not really a majority. And you're pissing off the libertarians, and you're pissing off the evangelicals, because those demographics in the small towns, in rural Texas, or even in the city districts, right? These electoral laws, they affect them too. Because these are bases that lean Republican, but they like the ability to throw out the establishment guy in the primary, for example.
Right.
Or to be like, you know what? You guys are getting a little out of control, so fuck you, we're going to go vote for the Democrat just this once, just to show you that we don't have to vote for your dumbass. And these election laws make that harder to do. And these guys are out there being like, oh, okay, I guess we'll vote for whoever Rick Perry wants. They're like, no, fuck you, Rick Perry. We're going to vote for anyone but you next time.
It's it's a quick aside about how ridiculous the new laws are. It isn't just brown people that it's affecting. There was a story, and I forget what her position was, but I think she was a judge, actually. Older woman, I think she was in her 60s. She'd been married for like 40 years. And I guess in getting married, so her name is different now than her birth certificate, is why this is relevant. So she had a voter registration card and a driver's license. And I guess because of the name thing, they didn't line up. She'd been registered since before she was married. And that had been fine for 40 plus years. But now it isn't. And it's arbitrary, and it's up to the poll worker who's looking at the ID at the time. So it's regulation of use is pretty much the way to put it. And it's going to have a ton of unintended consequences.
Right, but this is the kind of shit that it works exactly for one election.
It's not amusing, yeah. It's not. And it pisses people off in a big way. It's kind of like him abusing private property rights to basically open up the state to any gas company that wants to drill anywhere, no matter who it fucks over on anyone's land anywhere. That's not. Do you think a libertarian likes some dude with a bunch of trucks and a bunch of fucking rigs and wells and shit to come? Oh, we're drilling on your land now.
Libertarian, nobody likes that. That's how you turn. No, that's how you turn people libertarian.
Right.
Because you do that, it's like, that's it.
Land, but you don't own the mineral rights. We own that. Yeah. You think that is something that like a private property advocate would be very happy about? No.
Like I said, that's how you make people into private property advocates.
Right.
That's how you get some guy that's been there for 20 years on that piece of land, never voted, never been involved in politics. Now he's looking up all the libertarian, eminent domain, whatever groups on the internet in his area, in his county. It's like, what the fuck? Get these assholes out of my backyard.
And this guy he'd built $1 million house that was now useless and didn't have running water because of this, and he was like, I was always just, Republican, total Republican. Now I'm like a libertarian, I'm an independent because of this.
Pretty much.
There you go.
That's what happens. And that brings us to our next SmackDown victim today, Ken Cuccinelli.
That was a surprising race. And it wasn't the SmackDown it was predicted to be by the left, by the MSNBC types.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that first.
That's going to be. Because the polls on their side were all like, oh, it's going to be like double digits. 10%, 12%, 11%. It was, 2, I think, in the end?
Well, it's actually a little more interesting than that. Yeah, it was edge of less than 2%.
Like 1.8 or something like that.
Right, but there was a libertarian candidate.
Who got 6.
He was actually almost 7. Now, he was kind of a moderate libertarian. He wasn't as radical as most libertarians, which probably helped him pick up some votes, believe it or not. Libertarians can be moderate. You don't have to be this extreme government bad for everything. That's how you
have to believe in lizard people to be a libertarian?
Well, people the whole believing in lizard, those people don't vote. I'm not even worried about them. It's just more like
being in their bunker, their disaster prepper bunker.
Yeah, pretty much, especially on election day. Now, because they're worried the lizard people are going to control their minds to get them to vote for who they want. Now, I'm the most radical libertarian you'll ever meet, but I understand that if you want to get elected to office, you kind of have to think about picking up moderate demographics. You can't just be this extreme. And this libertarian, a lot of libertarians that I know, that I talked to, that I've seen on discussion forums, didn't like him because they pointed out some of his views were not quite libertarian, and they weren't. He wasn't the best libertarian candidate, but he managed to get 7% in the election. Let's remember that. I'm pretty sure that's a record for this country. In a statewide election in a state the size of Virginia, for governor, 7% for a libertarian. Not necessarily for a third party, but for libertarians specifically.
And supposedly he siphoned some votes from both in the exit polling, but when it's a 2% race, you can't say 7 isn't significant on both sides. I mean,
it is, but I'm pretty sure he broke Cuccinelli. I'm pretty sure very few people that voted for a libertarian would have voted for McAuliffe, because the guy is just Democrat establishment scum.
Well, and that's what I keep hearing is that the one criticism is, and this is coming from people on the right, is like the party establishment let this guy twist in the wind, didn't put any money because he was outspent 4-1 by McAuliffe, who a lot of people were terming a very beatable candidate on the left, very beatable. And you're right, because he was very establishment, very just sort of middle of the road. Nothing really remarkable about him except he wasn't Cuccinelli. And a lot of the anti-abortion shit came against, because Cuccinelli was for a lot of the really crazy, forced sonogram, restricted abortion, same kind of shit that Harry was for.
I mean, he was apologizing for the Salem witch trials, right? Virginia, I mean, come on. I'm exaggerating, obviously, but I mean, that's the kind of guy. I mean, this guy, Cuccinelli, I listened to a couple of his speeches, and I read a couple. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Like, you're not, like, sitting there, like, in a monastery somewhere? You're actually running for office? I mean, this guy's nuts.
He's crazy.
He makes Todd Aiken look moderate. It's like, I would not have voted for him. I can tell you that. I would have voted for Libertarian. This guy, no.
And this is against the guy that won for Attorney General in Virginia is actually just as crazy, if not more, and he won by a razor-thin margin. It was like 50% to 50%. It was decided by about 1,000 votes.
There was no libertarian in that race.
Right.
See what I'm saying? So this matters. And the reason it matters, I feel, for a couple reasons. For one, what you said about MSNBC types. A couple people I've heard said there's no triumphalism. There's no Democrats really celebrating McAuliffe's victory. Well, for one, a lot of Democrats don't like him because he's a scumbag. But more importantly, after the shutdown, we had this conversation that, look, now the Tea Party message is dead, and see, government's a good thing, and basically saying Democrats can put any crooked, corrupt, relatively conservative, middle-of-the-road establishment cunt up there, and they're going to win. They're just going to coast to victory against the Tea Party. How's that working out for you? It's like,
yeah.
This guy was, he's the definition of fundamentalist insanity. I can't remember the last time, especially in a swing state, we had a candidate this crazy. And he beat him by less than 2%. With a libertarian in the race. I am positive you take out the libertarian, Cuccinelli would have won. So that whole, now the Democrats can win every election because these Tea Partiers are crazy? No. Bullshit. Wishful thinking, and yes, they have their polls. The polls are becoming more and more unreliable. I mean, we saw the polls with the Romney-Obama thing, too, a year ago, and we talked about this. They leave out the young, because young people, a lot of the polls are done by CNN, by Gallup, by a lot of mainstream media that young people don't pay attention to. So,
well, not only that, but a lot of those polls were bullshit. They missed a lot of really. They ignore states that are in play. They ignore states that really aren't. Things like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's always that. But now on top of that, you have the representativeness problem. So what I'm predicting, this is this guy was nuts, and the libertarian got in the race, got 7%, took him out, and that's what we're talking about. That's where we need the rock promo for the libertarian candidate, and a lot of the Hannitys and O'Reillys after that were like, those libertarians, they didn't vote for Cuccinelli, and now we get this asshole McAuliffe, and it's like, yeah? Well, where is it written that a libertarian had to vote for Cuccinelli? I mean, Talk about a choice between a giant douche and a turd sandwich.
Right? Yeah, and they're pissed at the party establishment for not helping him out a little bit more. With a little bit more money, could it have made a difference? I don't know. Because what was the narrative though? The shutdown killed the Republican, right?
Right.
That was the narrative, but obviously that didn't happen.
Well,
You could
it's
say maybe if he won, the Democrat won, that was why, but I don't know if you could say that when it's so close.
yeah, but I think it's just this they're calling it the civil war in the Republican Party. I think we're witnessing this, and one thing we're witnessing is, and I've been saying this is going to happen since 2010. This is another disagreement you and I have had, Joe. Is libertarians are finally taking off on their own. Now, I don't think the Libertarian Party is going to become a powerful third party. I think they're going to eventually seize control of the Republican Party because the establishment is just plain dead. I mean, like, Rick Perry is kind of its last stand. Everywhere else, I mean, that's a big red state. Like, where else is there Republican establishments to charge? Except the South, and we'll get to that.
And I actually have one that I want to get to later on. So someone else who won big.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. Yeah, the Alabama race.
I have to retract myself, by the way. The Attorney General race is not over yet. Actually, it's so close.
Wow!
I'm still counting it. It's within 1,300 votes.
And that's another Democratic establishment turd versus
against a nut. He's crazy. This guy.
Yeah.
This is the guy that in the in I think it was 8 years ago. He actually he proposed a more severe version of this law that is now passed. It was actually 2009. He wanted a mandatory transvaginal ultrasound, which is it's probably the most invasive thing you could like force someone to go through, sort of like a colonoscopy or something like that. Yeah, ridiculous.
And
but this is the guy. This is the guy.
And you're surprised libertarians are not voting for this.
Right.
I mean, you want to talk about making libertarians. You know what a better way is to make libertarians than a drill for oil in someone's backyard? What else are you drilling?
Yeah, it bears mentioning. And it's interesting, actually, when you look at a cross-section of the state, most of the state is red. Most of the state went for Cuccinelli. But I think it was like, basically around Richmond, everywhere around D.C., those counties, and like a couple of other, kind of like Fairfax, I think a couple of big cities. Not where I'm from, Norfolk and Virginia Beach. That's very red. Because that's very military, very old school Republicans. But most of the state didn't even really vote for this guy that won. But it's several kind of key big cities that did.
Well, I mean,
that's kind of interesting electorally to note that.
But that's normal, especially in swing states. I mean, Nevada, Iowa, Ohio, those states kind of work the same way.
And actually, I think of Washington the same way because and if you look at our little demographic map, it makes complete sense. You have this coastal area that's very, very liberal.
But Washington,
the rest of the whole state is deep red, deep.
True, but Washington,
get off my land, kind of red.
Oh yeah, but Washington is not very swing because just Seattle and those cities are so much bigger.
So big, yeah.
Yeah, there's more people there.
There's nobody, yeah. There's people, but it's by nothing.
Say it leans blue, but
it's the same way. Actually, West Texas, people who don't know, it looks big on the map. There's nothing there. Take a look and draw yourself from Dallas to El Paso across the 20 freeway sometime. It's nothing. There's nothing there. So yeah, it's very red, but that's why they say Texas is turning blue because the big cities are very rapidly turning that way.
It's true, but to go back to Virginia, and like I said, like it kind of insults me, but it warms my heart. Like this idea that they expected libertarians to vote for these assholes. It's like, why? What does a poster child for fundamentalist stupidity that wants to give mandatory transvaginal sonograms in order for someone to get an abortion? What does he have to offer libertarians? Now, there are libertarians who are pro-life and who want abortion banned.
Right.
But not one of them will support this shit. You either ban it or you don't ban it. No libertarian is in favor of the government having the authority to order unnecessary medical procedures. I mean, that's just, it's mind-boggling.
Which you go back to Dr. Paul would never be for a policy like that.
Exactly. He is an obstetrician.
Yeah.
Who is a libertarian and deeply, deeply pro-life.
Yes.
And he would never support something like this.
And he wouldn't support a ban at the federal level either. He wants state by state to decide, but...
It's more like county by county, but yeah.
Right. Anyhow.
So that's where this is going, and I'm seeing this, and it makes me happy because a lot of folks that were trying to discredit the Tea Party, and I don't think they were doing it on purpose. I don't think they are malicious. I think they just didn't have the foresight to see this. They kind of try to marginalize libertarians with the Ken Cuccinellis, the psycho evangelicals. And this does not bode well.
So I have a counterpoint a little.
Yes.
When we're talking about SmackDown. One of the bigger SmackDowns, the biggest actually of this election, was arguably Chris Christie. Won re-election.
Definitely the biggest.
He's usually the biggest anywhere he goes. He's typically the what was it, the Time Magazine? Have you seen this Time Magazine cover? The elephant in the room. Wow. Wow. Keep it classy, Time Magazine.
Yeah, well, this is Time Magazine.
Yeah, I have one of those.
Hitler.
If you want
come on.
If you want that issue, it's in my bathroom. I'm using it for personal use. I've kind of cut it down the middle. I'm using it for anyways.
Intellectual reading. Anyway,
it's really effective. Anyway, but no, he won overwhelmingly. He won by, I think it was like 67-68%. Beat the hell out of the Democrat. It was a lady. I forget her name, but this is a state that was traditionally very blue. But he won like almost every demographic: single women, married women, men, Latinos, African Americans. He won pretty much everybody.
But a few weeks before that, Cory Booker went to Senate by a landslide.
Yes, he did.
New Jersey.
Yes, he did.
And he's the mayor of Tremont, right?
Newark.
Newark. Yeah. And he is a Democrat, obviously.
Yes, he is.
So
it's still a mostly blue state in other regards. But I
don't remember the name of the state senator that ran against Christie. But I do remember that there was a pretty contentious Democratic primary, and she's the union candidate. She's the public employee unions endorsed, teachers unions, firefighters, all that. And New Jersey is notorious for their corrupt public employee unions.
This is why The Sopranos was set there, people.
Right. And Christie, actually, when he came in, he crushed them. I mean, he ran roughshod. This is why
he ran on busting the unions. Yeah.
Right. Now they deserved it. They some of the most corrupt unions in the country, and he did it. And they cried and they whined. They tried to make use of the fact that he's a Republican, and he just kept rolling over them. And he actually brought them under control. He actually, I have to give him credit. I'm not a big fan of Christie. He actually improved a lot of the public services in New Jersey by doing this, because he actually got the unions under control. He didn't get rid of them, but he actually got them to, work and got some of the public services to work. So this is one of his claims to fame. Is this how he got? Well, I guess he was already big. This is how he got popular. So that candidate was very unpopular, because even with the Democrats, those unions are not popular. Whereas Chris Christie is a very middle-of-the-road Republican. He's not a Tea Party Republican. He's probably one of the most liberal Republicans left at this point at the national level. In fact, someone asked me the other day, hey, if Christie runs for president, how do you see him getting through Iowa or Florida, the primaries? And my response was by running as a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
So
I never thought I'd see the day where Chris Christie would be talked about as the moderate voice of the Republican Party. When he came in, he sounded like a nut bar. But I don't know if he modified himself, and he does seem to be striking a more moderate tone, and that's probably because he's got higher ambitions.
There's also the rise of the Ken Cuccinellis and the Todd Akins.
Right. And that's the thing. Actually, maybe that's more what it is. It's more like comparison, like how, like a hot chick will have, ugly friends, Yeah. They seem even hotter in comparison, but yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Honestly, I don't feel like Chris Christie was ever an extreme Republican. There's a couple of things.
The union busting mostly made me think it was.
But that's not extreme, necessarily, in my opinion. I mean, a lot of Republicans do that. And I think a lot of it was the way he did it. He has this New Jersey humor about him, right, where he was just talking, just the way he did it, he was just rough. He was not politically correct about it. He just nope, you guys are assholes, and I'm going to crush you. It was
very Tony Soprano about it.
Right. Yeah. But I feel like, one, in New Jersey, that catches on. That's a good way to buy in with your demographics and with your constituency. And two, I don't feel like that's really a bad thing. I don't feel like that. I think some people tried to make use of that to marginalize him because they really couldn't think against his policies.
What's interesting to me, though, is how the Hannity types were in love with him, and now they hate him, and now they actually want him to go away. and they're just hemming and hawing now that he looks like I mean he's quite obviously aligning himself for a run for president in 2016. It seems inevitable now. And he made several. The speech he made when he won re-election was pretty obviously kind of geared toward, a kind of a coming out party for him. And then he was in like a show on NBC. He was on the Michael J. Fox show, which gets a lot of ratings. He guest starred as there. These are all things that are meant to increase his exposure, and it's quite obvious that that's what he's doing. And so I guess the question is he? Does he even? So I guess you've already said. So he doesn't stand a chance, is what you're saying. He doesn't pass the smell test.
Well,
With the kind of, because a lot of the Democrats are saying, "Oh, there's a Republican that's not a loon." That's what they're saying about him.
Yeah, the Democrats don't vote in the Republican primaries, folks.
Well, but I mean,
especially when it's an open seat, so they have to go vote in their own primary.
And I guess it was Bill Maher this week on his show. He called him an indoor Republican, or as he would say, a potty trained Republican.
That's awesome. Here's the thing. Here's what I don't think he doesn't stand a chance. I meant what I said. I think he might be successful if he runs as a Democrat. Who would have thought Charlie Crist could be a Democrat, right?
So you think he's a Democrat like Charlie Crist, a Democrat like Bloomberg was a Republican, right?
God, don't get me started on that.
Like
on New York,
Arnold Schwarzenegger was a Republican.
Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger actually started out pretty Republican, and then he moved to the center. The then center. But with Chris Christie, specifically, I kind of want to save my national predictions for 2016 for the end here. But it's not that he doesn't stand a chance in general. It's that the way the primary system is built, I don't feel like he could make it past Florida.
But Mitt did.
Because
if you see it like Mitt can, I mean, that guy was undeniably creepy and awkward. I mean, you can't deny that he was a really weird dude. Come on.
No, I mean, you're not going to get any defensive Mitt from me.
I think the fact that he won was just the fact that, like, he was the only one with, like, a brain stem that was functioning that was in the race, really.
I feel like it's going to be a different race. There's going to be some much more viable candidates this time. But like I said, I kind of want to save that for the end. We do have a couple more things to talk about here.
And actually, there was another, I wanted to mention the Alabama.
Travel south, to Alabama.
First district congressional primary race. This was a primary race.
Republican primary.
For Republican primary. And because it's a district, it's the most conservative district in the country, a lot of people say. And it's one of these districts where the Republican primary is the election. Because the Democrat has no chance. It's pretty much one of those districts. But it was a kind of a business-oriented and backed Republican against a guy named Dean Young, who was this nut, religious fanatic Tea Party guy. And I guess all the local business people's money was behind the more mainstream dude. And
that's not surprising.
He's a birther. He's kind of like, I'll stand on the floor of the Congress and say this is a Christian nation. We're Christian values. We're Christian. And yeah, he's one of these guys. He's a nut. He's an Aiken, is what we'll call him. Maybe we'll term that.
Well, I don't think Aiken deserves that term.
Maybe not. But yeah, and I
posted a meme to the history.
I posted this on our Facebook feed too. When you marry that, you try to be Tea Party, but you also try to thump your Bible. It does seem to not. It seems to turn everyone off, doesn't it? Because he got pretty soundly beat.
Well, it depends where you are. I feel like in the South, oddly enough, these Tea Party guys, they make a big fuss, but they don't always win. Sometimes they do, sometimes. I mean, Spencer Baucus, for example, who the ex-chairman, I don't know if he still is, of the Finance Committee, and, Ron Paul was under him with the Monetary Policy Subcommittee, and this guy's a colossal scumbag. I also believe he's from Alabama. He's just bought and sold by Wall Street. He was one of the few Republicans to vote in favor of TARP. I mean, he's definitely top 5 on my shit list for congressional Republicans. And he had a pretty viable Tea Party challenger in 2012. And in the primary, it's another district where the Democrats stand no chance. The primary is the election. And it was a viable challenge, and he still won. He still endured, even though he's also considered one of the most corrupt members of Congress. So I feel like in Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, these deep South states, these neocon-type business Republicans, they actually do endure against the Tea Party. The Tea Party puts up a fight, but they don't win. And I feel like the reason for that, again, this goes back to the map that we posted, I encourage everyone to look at, is the South, kind of the political culture of the South, is, democracy is very important to us, but we got to make sure the people who vote, they got their wits about them. So we got to make sure it's only the white males that own property. And when I'm talking about property, I prefer living property, if you know what I mean. Because, them people that are property, we can't let them vote. Who are they going to vote into office?
Yeah, people forget how bourgeois the South was. It really was, and it was a very kind of good old. I mean, people will say the good old boys. That's where that comes from. Oh. They all ran things. The white males ran things. That's the way it was. Very, very, very much about the rich property-owning elite, and yeah, property included people, as well as land.
And that included your wife, by the way, not just your slaves.
And as we've mentioned, people forget, these were Democrats for a long, long time, until kind of the party realignment of the 60s happened, so the strategy. And not to mention, we've talked about this even in the last show, it's turning blue. And I've seen a couple other reports, a couple of shows saying the same thing. Georgia's turning blue. I think, or what would it take to turn Georgia blue?
It's really not blue. It's like if you take Newt Gingrich and you make it into a Democrat, he's still Newt Gingrich.
Right.
And this is what this is, and for one thing I want to point out, we are not talking about the entire South here. We are talking about the deep South. Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, maybe parts of some of the surrounding states around there. And if you look at, again, the political culture map, this makes it very clear. Those, it's very culturally and politically different from the Beltway. And if you think about it, Newt Gingrich, well, he didn't win those states, but he was in within 1 percentage point of winning in Alabama and Mississippi, and those are late primary states. So he had no chance, and they still voted for him.
Yeah, they like the older white male who owns business, who's rich. They figure he knows what he's talking about.
He's also Protestant, and he was
right. An upstart Tea Party guy. They're not necessarily going to flock in droves to him.
Right. So what happened there was you had this split. Santorum got about, they each got 30-30-30. Santorum, Romney, and Gingrich. And Ron Paul got about 5%. So there's not a big libertarian element there, which, again, this matters. That's an element that doesn't pull an upset. So you got your religious nuts, and then you got your Romney and Gingrich-type Republicans that come together most of the time, unless there's obviously a divide like that. But yes, there have been some places, some actually, interestingly, more liberal places in Georgia, I would say, or even Alabama, where the Tea Party has successfully ceased the primary, and now the Democrats are moving in on that center vote, and they're going to win. And I've been saying this for a while, like the woman that's running for Saxby Chambliss' seat from Georgia. It's a Democrat. I forget her name. Nunn, I believe is her last name, N-U-N-N. She is backed by a lot of the same business interests that back Romney. Right. In 2012, and she's a Democrat because the Republican guy is a Tea Partier, and a lot of the big business interests are not really in favor of Tea Partiers. So, right. So again, even though this is not, there's not libertarians there, but again, it's the same smackdown because you're kind of letting the Democrats move in on those places because you've taken the Republican Party from these old white guys, essentially, and that, I think, can bring us to our final, the main event, we shall say.
The main SmackDown event.
SmackDown. And, of course, everyone's favorite target and mine, President Barack Obama.
Barack Hussein Obama. Every time I say that, it's usually a racial thing meant there, but...
I saw the best meme the other day. There's a lot of Obama memes. Most of them suck. And it's one of those, what I think I do, what they think I do, whatever, right? Uh-huh. For Obama. And the last picture of what I really do is just a portrait of George W. Bush. Oh,
that's pretty good, actually. And
great, yeah.
And actually, on Bill Maher's show this week, it was interesting that, a quick aside, that there was a guy, I forget his name right now, but you should check it out. It was one of the main guys. He actually wrote the program the NSA uses to spy on everybody. And he actually left the NSA within a couple of weeks of 9/11 happening because he already saw what was going to happen. Yeah, this is before the NSA went nuts. They were only spying on certain people when they were very mindful of not spying on everyone.
Before 9/11 happened?
Right. Correct.
So how do you know they were going to go nuts if 9/11 happened?
Right after it happened. It was
okay.
already starting to go to shit.
Okay.
Within a month, he was out of the NSA. and it's since been crusading against them because they've just way overreached.
Oh yeah, I forget his name, but I don't know what you're talking about.
The fact that they're listening to everything, he was just horrified, and
Hey,
when Marr asked him,
don't diss the NSA. It's the only government agency that listens.
interesting.
I just had to throw that in there.
True.
Anyway, go ahead.
But the thing he was saying was he was asked, compare Bush and Obama, is he doing better or worse? He's like, oh, way worse, because he's expanded. And Democrats always get credit for supposedly being for the people. They end up ramping up a lot of this clandestine spy shit a lot more than they get credit for. People forget how authoritarian Clinton was. Things like Waco and Ruby Ridge and Alien Gonzalez all happened under his watch. Give me a break.
And a lot of the shit that, like with the Department of Homeland Security and the Patriot Act, that Bush did not put those policies in place. He authorized their use post 9/11, but they were Clinton policies, like extraordinary rendition. And the movie Rendition actually points this out. These are Clinton-era policies. They were there, and they were passed, and this is why, once again, going back to just the Obama zombie logic. Oh, we'll have this power, but we won't use it.
We won't use it,
we
right.
Drone strike.
It's like during NDAA. Yeah, I won't actually use it.
Right.
No. Yeah.
No, there couldn't possibly be some psycho from more red state that gets into office and can't rub his two brain cells together and is like, it's all right. We can have our extraordinary rendition or whatever you call that, because we don't want them Arabs sneaking into the country with their nuclear dirty bomb. It's like, really? I mean, come on. How short-sighted can you get?
And we're still holding a lot of these guys, by the way. But anyway.
And I wonder what does that cost? I mean, to think about that.
That's a question, yeah.
I mean, this is...
60 Minutes did this story about how they're doing trials on some of these guys, like the Blind Sheikh was one, and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was another. And it's just crazy. It's kooky when you watch this story. Like, sometimes then they were told during court, like, there's all these rules, like, if they start talking about classified stuff, the judge or whatever is supposed to hit a button and a siren goes off. And, okay, court's over, everyone goes back, and we stop talking about this stuff. And apparently during the trial, the lights started going off without anyone pushing the button. Yeah, the CIA was monitoring the trial. They don't want any details of what went on before these guys got to American soil. And not even American soil, now they're on Cuban soil. But they don't want any of the details of the few years they were in the European black prisons, the black ops prisons. They don't want any of those details of what went on, how they were interrogated, quote, quote. They don't want any of that mentioned in court and on the record because, yeah, it's bad. And, yeah, Obama has kept these policies. They're not shut down. It's still going on. We're still blowing people with drones now. He started that as well.
Right. So. And where we're going with this now, and I feel like Obama is just getting attacked from all directions. And honestly, I mean, I don't know.
It's quite something, isn't it? It's quite something.
I feel like a lot of it is what we've talked about in the past is just the new information age. You can't hide anything. I'm sure Bush was every bit as bad on every domain and every front.
No doubt.
But, Bush really, he had you could say three very big skeletons. Okay? He had, obviously, the war, which we went there for nothing, and Donald Rumsfeld's unknown. How anyone could take that seriously, I don't understand. Anyway.
Cheney defends to this day, by the way.
Yeah, but that's Cheney. Anyway, I mean, come on. So what? Yeah, and Karl Rove is now running a PAC for electable Republicans. Yeah, Karl, you backed Romney. I don't want to hear about electable Republicans.
I think my life was just like given purpose that night where Ohio went for Obama, and he was just incredulous on live TV. He's like, no, it's still, there might, no, you can't call it for, just shut up.
That tantrum was like, Karl, just go away.
Everyone else was just face palming like, please stop, you're ruining this broadcast. There's probably some producer screaming in his ears, shut up, stop talking. It was hilarious. Anyway.
Yeah, and it's great because this is Fox News, this is not NBC, and they're telling Karl Rove to shut up. It's like, that's it, dude.
That shit burned.
You're done.
That was
game over. Yeah, I mean, he pulled a Mubarak there.
So funny.
Yeah, it was like watching Gaddafi talk about how there's no revolution in Libya 2 days before the rebels enter Tripoli. It was like on that. It was like, dude, seriously, dude, come on. Even
Pretty.
you are not this stupid. But in any case, going back to what we were talking about, I mean, so that was one big skeleton, obviously, the wars. Two, you could say the Patriot Act to an extent toward the end. Some of the stuff we're pissed off about now with the police state, it was starting to get there around this point in his presidency. And then third one's Katrina, and just generally just the incompetence there.
Katrina subset incompetence, yeah.
Right, and the FEMA and the Homeland Security, because it really showed you just how inept the Homeland Security Department is. And God help us if there's an emergency, a nationwide emergency, where they actually have to do something. Come on, they couldn't handle a fucking hurricane. It's Louisiana. It's New Orleans. They have hurricanes. This is not abnormal. I mean, God forbid there's an actual security emergency, and these assholes have to provide for our safety. We're fucked.
Yeah, and the Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job, was a noose they're going to always tie around him from now till the end of time. Yeah, rightfully so. I mean, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
You talk about Obama has hired some dunderheads too, but
someone appointed him.
Right.
And gave him cabinet position, by the way. He was the one FEMA director that had that position. But after that, even Bush Jr. wouldn't defend that asshole. He's like, no, that's it, dude.
Right. Yeah,
you're done. Go home.
Not that Chertoff was any better, by the way, but...
Well, no, Chernoff. And Chernoff was the secretary.
Right.
Well, no, he's just another white asshole that golfs with Rick Perry. I mean, he started the body scanners because he owns the company.
He retired. Yeah, he retired from life with a huge stock package of the company.
I just want to put him. I want to put him, Rick Perry, and Rick Scott. So three of those assholes. Put him out on just send him out for a cruise on the Gulf of Mexico. I heard there's a couple of wells out there owned by Deepwater Horizon, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah,
it's just to show them what they're doing.
Break the pool cue in half like the Joker did in Dark Knight. Throw it up with them and say, "Okay, you guys figure it out."
We're going to be having tryouts.
Yeah. Make it fast.
I mean, these guys, you can't believe the nerve of these guys. Just with the shit they say in their different.
They must have balls the size of cantaloupes or something. I don't know.
Something. They fear nothing.
Pretty much.
But again, and I am not defending George W. Bush. I can't stand that prick.
Miss me yet?
No, we hardly noticed you left. Anyway, Bush actually fired shitty cabinet members.
It's an amazing concept, isn't it?
Okay, he fired Rumsfeld. Yeah, he should have done it before the 2006 election. Would have cost him fewer seats, but he still fired him.
Right.
He fired the asshole behind FEMA. He fired a couple of Homeland Security. So he actually, the guys in his cabinet. Good God, there's a high security mental retardation facility. A locked hospital for the mentally retarded here in San Diego is going to recommend Bush Jr. replace a couple of his cabinet officials with those guys because, good God.
It would have been an improvement, yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's insane the shit they pulled.
But then again, when you see Janet Napolitano, who was in the cabinet, Catherine Sebelius,
right, Kathleen. Now that's what I'm saying is Bush hired them, but he at least cycled through them. Obama hasn't fired anyone. So few people that have resigned, and interestingly, they resigned kind of the way Rove and Myers resigned.
Actually, a lot of people resigned this year. A lot of
his secretaries, but they resigned because they're smart. Because they've been doing this a lot longer than fucking Obama, like Hillary and Tim Geithner. It's just number one crook in the country.
It's almost like I think they knew second terms are just bad. In the last 40 years, second terms have been horrible.
And especially with this administration, they knew shit was going to hit the fan. So they're just like, peace out. We're not dealing with this because they're smart. They understood this. Obama didn't.
The incompetence was already starting to leak out in the election. It's just that, again, he was running against fucking Romney.
Yeah,
like I said, that was to lose to Romney would have been like Bush losing to Kerry. It's
What was that? Lewis Black? Was it Lewis Black that said that? Right? That's like a
normal guy who loses to the Special Olympics.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing, literally every department. Okay, you got Benghazi for the CIA and for Hillary for the Department of State. You got the NSA, that's under the Department of Defense. Now, I don't think Chuck Hagel had a lot to do with that. It's the assholes before him.
Well, Gates was before him. Yeah.
Panetta, don't forget Panetta, who's also ex-CIA.
Actually, Gates, I don't think was involved, but it might have been more Panetta than anything. But
I'm pretty sure Gates was too. It's just it goes far back enough that we don't know. Even Rumsfeld, I would think. This has Rumsfeld.
Gates was the carryover from Bush.
Right, but he was after Rumsfeld. And then, so obviously Treasury with the IRS targeting Mr. Geithner there. Okay, and Jack Lew is not much better. I mean, they're like, oh, well, yeah, well, he's not Geithner? Like Obama is not Bush?
He's kind of like a nobody who just sort of rose through the ranks, and he was just...
No. He's very, very, very heavily Wall Street committed. Or connected. I mean, he was on the Securities Exchange Commission, right? And
like I said, he rode the rocket ride up.
Yeah, but there's a lot of documentation of him basically turning the other cheek for Wall Street.
Well, he was the chief of staff in the first term, wasn't he?
Who?
He was the chief of staff in the first term, wasn't he?
For Geithner?
No, for Obama, I thought. Jack Lew.
No, I don't. Was it? I'm not sure.
And he was very Wall Street elected, remember?
Oh, yeah.
Was at least, so.
Oh, yeah. At least in the first term. So, now you've got... So, I'm only going to talk about Eric Holder.
That speaks for itself, doesn't it?
I mean, that's it.
That's another show. I mean, really.
Yeah, I mean, Fast and Furious, the AP scandal, chasing Snowden around, all this shit, okay? And now even some of the more peripheral departments, Health and Human Services, Sebelius. I mean, it's like you got nothing. And even the smaller ones, I mean, there's labor schemes that we haven't addressed, but they're there. There's Solyndra and Fisker for energy. I mean, these are departments you never hear about. Even those are managing to fuck up and cause scandals. And this is, I mean, I don't get how Obama's popularity isn't in the 20s at this point.
It is in the 30s, to be fair, but...
Which is pretty bad. He's never been that low. It's like, how... I don't care what your party affiliation is or whatever. How do you take him seriously? I mean, you have 5, 6, 7 different scandals, and it's the same bullshit excuse for every scandal. Don't bother us or we can't work on it.
I'll confess in 08 I voted for him to give myself a Bush enema, kind of just get that out of my system. I felt like I had to.
We're in California. You could vote for a monkey.
Right. But do I wish I could take that vote back? Yeah, pretty much. Because, yeah, no, I don't take him seriously anymore at all.
Who were you going to vote for, McCain?
Put me down. Well, right, yeah. But I just picked one of the bowls of shit. Who cares, right? It's
really, essentially. I mean, I voted for a libertarian, but Bob Barr, who was kind of a sad version of a libertarian, but we won't go there right now.
So my 2 bowls of shit were from the same animal. Yours was just a different animal's shit.
Essentially, yeah. In any case, so I don't mean, and to be fair with Sebelius, let's talk about Kathleen Sebelius for a second. I feel like this whole Obamacare thing is being hanged around her neck. Like, oh look, it was all Sebelius' fault.
And that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's bullshit on many levels because, the president is in charge. It's supposed to be the buck stops here, right? And not only that, but the law and the website aren't the same thing.
She didn't write the law.
Right, and not to mention, right, she's not a legislator, and more to the point, she wasn't even in, I don't know if she was in any of the discussions, I can't say that for sure, but the Congress writes the laws. And it was
No. The lobbyists write the laws, but...
Well, I'm saying nominally. But yeah, and
this law is
writing that law. And from the beginning, too. But really, the effort, here's the thing that people forget. The effort predated the Obama administration. The law was being kind of drafted in pieces before he was even elected. It was being queued up and teed up for him to push through when he was elected. But Kennedy started that a full year before. It was during the primary season that it was already being kicked off.
There's another honest, uncorrupt political family.
Because Daschle was in on it, and he was thrown out in that election.
Right.
So,
that was 06.
There were people involved in that weren't even in the Congress when it was actually passed. Involved in drawing up the initial kind of framework, let's say, for it. So there's a lot of things that, right, we're out of her control. We're never in her control. And even I would include the website, per se, wasn't even really in her control.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, she's an idiot. She's incompetent. She can't speak to save her life, and I think she deserves some of the blame. She's not, she's not going to walk away scot-free. But what, again, this was pointed out on Against Crony Capitalism, and I've been observing this myself. That there's so many different parts to this law, and there's so many different contradictory provisions that make no sense, and they're vague, and some of them are written by the bureaucrats, and some by the lobbyists for the corporations, and some by the knee-jerk, bleeding heart liberals that just want health care for the poor, man. And it's just this.
Hey,
it's a patchwork. Okay, there is no consistency. There's no single brain behind this law, and it's such a clusterfuck that even without the website, okay, the website I feel like is almost a distraction from just how bad these regulations are. And now, thankfully, I'm liking it that the focus is shifting to Obama and the promise that you could keep your health insurance. Because hey, you can't blame civilians for that. She didn't say that. No. So it's going there, and everyone is scurrying to blame each other.
Yeah,
the insurance companies are blaming the providers are blaming the politicians are blaming the bureaucrats are blaming the insurance companies. You guys, listen, America is not this stupid. And it reminds me of two things, and they both happened under Bush. The first was Libbygate.
Scooter
Remember
Libby.
that? Right. Scooter Libby, where they had I believe it was the CIA operatives whose names were released, and their cover was blown because they were investigating a little too deeply into 9/11. And then 4 years later, Nancy Pelosi went after Alberto Gonzalez, the
Attorney General.
Then it's another award-winning.
Oh, yeah.
Honest Attorney General we had in this country.
That came straight out of the Texas Crony Boys Association.
Yeah, he was their token Mexican.
He was their Attorney General, I think, maybe, too.
I don't know who he was in Texas, but
Governor Bush.
But he was their token Mexican.
Token Latino guy, yeah.
And so she went after, but it wasn't just him. Scooter Libby was arrested for that. And, again, this was when Congress subpoenaed Rove and Myers. Remember that? And who were the chiefs of staff. I mean, Rove was the chief of staff for Bush himself. Libby was the chief of staff for Cheney, and I forget what it was that Myers did. But they all resigned in shame. Because, no, we're done. No, that's it. We're finished. No. George, it's a subpoena. I can't lie. I can't say there was an unknown. I don't want to go to jail.
No, my nose won't grow, but I will be in federal pound-me-in-the-ass prison.
I would love to see that man there. But in any case, so you remember that.
What a dick, by the way. Bush could have pardoned him on the way out the door, and he didn't do it.
He didn't? I thought he did.
No. What a douchebag.
Sorry, Scoot.
Stay classy, Bush. Stay classy.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Okay, so we saw the parade of old country club of shit-talking white guys that were very corrupt, and in the end, they all just like rats abandoning a sinking ship as it all started to fall apart. Well, guess what? This is now what's happening with the Democrats. We already had the smart ones already gone. Hillary's gone. Geithner's gone. They're like, we're not sticking around for this. I mean, this is, this is like Wall Street cartel mentality. Get out before they catch you.
And now there's Democrats calling for a delay, too, like the Tea Party people were.
Right, just like there were Republicans that were going after Bush toward the end, yes. And the other thing it reminds me of, and again, I'm not exactly sure if this was under Bush or Obama, it was right in between, is again the Deepwater Horizon accident.
That was under Obama.
Right in the beginning of Obama, right?
Yeah, I want to say.
Right, but all those corporate pricks from BP and from Deepwater Horizon itself and from a couple other companies, they were all blaming each other for this.
Halliburton.
Of course. Well, nothing like this happens without Dick Cheney's involvement.
And they made the cement casing, supposedly. But
so basically it was the same assholes.
But yeah, the regulatory body in charge of inspecting and maintaining that was basically like granting favors back and forth to the oil company, which is basically coasting on their favors. Getting comped rooms and like getting literal prostitutes delivered to them, and yeah, it was quite a chummy relationship.
Right, and then when literally shit goes up in flames, now it's everyone's fault but mine.
Right.
So I'm sorry, Obama, this is not going to fly. There's no way, no matter how much you try to marginalize Republicans and say, oh, Darrell Issa is just, this is partisanship, and these guys are trying to do, they don't like Obamacare, they're trying to derail our work. I mean, that's all true, and it's not going to help you.
What's interesting, a lot of people were saying part of the reason that McAuliffe in Virginia, his victory was so slim, Obama actually went and stumped for him at the end of the election there.
What do you do to Obama?
That actually sunk him a little bit.
What do you do to Obama?
And a lot of people were comparing it like when Bush stumped for the previous guy. He actually barely won too. But one thing I want to address a little, just really briefly, is the Hannah fuck types calling the Obamacare rollout Obama's Katrina. No.
You say bitter?
No. Because not to my knowledge, 1,900 people aren't dying because they can't log into a website. But so let's keep things in perspective here. But is it indicative? Yeah. Could things have been done better? Oh yeah.
Could they have been done better, Joe? I'm not sure they could have been done worse. Better.
Well, it could be worse. Shit might be on fire. I mean, that's always worse. But as the Deepwater Horizon showed us. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Now, where I kind of, to answer your question from earlier in the show about Christie, and where I see this going, and again, this is just in stark disagreement with the mad-out types, talking about how, the Tea Party's
dead.
They're dead. And
yeah.
now, basically, the same old white guys, except Obama is their token non-white guy, that are in charge of the Democratic Party. And like you've mentioned multiple times, they go to the same country club. They are on first name basis with Dick Cheney. They were Karl Rove. Don't get it twisted.
They go shake hands in the background,
Right. These pricks, okay, they are not coasting to victory in 2016 or even 2014 against the Tea Party. I'm sorry, no matter what you say about the shutdown, we've just had it demonstrated that's not happening. If you put Hillary, Biden, who else do they have? Martin O'Malley from Maryland. Good God, I can't stand that guy.
That's the one thing actually that people were saying on the hand type was that in a poll, a fictional race between Christie and Hillary, Christie loses.
Christie's not going to run from the Republicans, so I don't care. Put them both up against Rand Paul and watch him go Marco Rubio on their asses.
Will he make his own victory speech, or will he have to crib it from other victory speeches?
Actually, no. Check it out. I got this. He'll write it. He'll take someone else's victory speech, and he'll put his own authorship on it, and then he'll start his own copyright committee that signs that it was actually his copyright. There. Now I made fun of Rand Paul. Now nobody can say I'm being biased or whatever. But I would still vote for him. I mean, despite those.
I'm just checking.
And honestly, Rand Paul's turning into an asshole. Let's be honest. I mean, I like him as a politician.
Vote for an imbecile, shitty manager. You'd vote for that.
Look at the competition, Joe.
Well, but I'm saying, what's the difference between one imbecile, shitty manager and another, though?
His positions, his policies. What he wants to do.
It's what he thinks while he's being an imbecile, shitty manager.
It's not like Hillary is less of an imbecile and she's a fucking criminal.
I'm a Hillary fan.
Who else is there?
That's giant fusion turd sandwich to me.
And honestly, I didn't say anything about Rand Paul being a shitty manager. That was about Ron Paul and the newsletter, which was in the 80s, and Rand Paul was not involved with that. But in any case, on Rand, and in general, if all the Tea Party, Virginia has demonstrated this, and to a smaller extent Alabama, and we're seeing some indicators of it in Texas, all the Tea Party has to do is get someone that's not a psychotic fundamentalist asshole. And no Democrat establishment prick is going to keep up.
Like I said before, good luck with that.
That's what Maddow said.
If you can put them together with pieces of lesser Tea Party guys like Frankenstein, go for it.
I don't.
It's live.
No. But see, this is the thing. I feel like you're making the same mistake that the liberal pundits are making. You're underestimating the Tea Party. Come on, Cuccinelli lost by 2%. Now you can say that's scary, but it's reality.
I think it is scary.
Right, the evangelicals and
the type that you You cry, yeah.
Yeah, but McAuliffe wasn't exactly a good candidate. And neither are Hillary, Biden, O'Malley, these establishment Democrats, and they're running on Obama's legacy, just
I
like
can't believe
McCain.
that Biden actually seriously is considering running. I haven't even seen that guy come out in public until like this last week. Where's he been since the election?
I don't know, but I wish he'd stay there.
Especially now it came out in this new book, the Double Chain or Double Down, the new Game Change book about the last election, that they were seriously considering replacing.
Getting rid of him. Yeah. Look, you remember a gentleman named John McCain that ran against Obama? He's an establishment Republican, and he was running on Bush Jr.'s legacy. Yeah, exactly. Who? Yeah. So the idea that all these guys, Biden, Hillary, they're closely involved, they're closely tied to Obama's administration. And we've been talking about how Obama's administration is getting choked from all sides by scandals, by incompetence, by lies, different demographics pissing off their own base. How are you going to beat Rand Paul? Yeah, you could beat some fundamentalist psycho. Give you that, maybe. Because libertarians wouldn't vote for him. They wouldn't vote for you, but they wouldn't vote for him. They'd sit out. How are you going to beat Rand Paul? You're not.
I guess we'll see.
Right, so I don't, I just feel like a lot of people are saying what you're saying. Are you telling me libertarians are not going to vote for Rand Paul?
I'm saying they will, and that their 5% will go to his total, and it will mean nothing.
Why is that? How so?
Because they're 5%.
No, it depends on what states they're in. No. Joe, remember, we talked about this. First of all, 5%. Very few presidential elections are further apart than 5%. Secondly, this is not about the popular vote. All libertarians have to do is throw Nevada, Iowa, Ohio, Florida, Virginia, and they've proven, except maybe Florida, that they can throw those states. Those states are close enough that you get, and in those states it's more. It's like 6-7%. And Ron Paul's people already control the Republican parties in a lot of those states. So I think it's wishful thinking of people that they think the Democratic establishment can stand up to Rand Paul or even Ted Cruz. I'm not a fan of Ted Cruz, but Ted Cruz is not quite as crazy evangelical. He can appeal to libertarians.
Like I said, I guess we'll find out. I'm ready for an entertaining, primary season either way.
It'll be great. And the other thing, we talked about Christie earlier, and honestly, I don't see the man running. You talked about how he's gearing up for a run. I don't think he's actually going to do it. He might talk about it, but he's not going to do it. This happens. But assuming he runs, I don't think he's actually going to run as a Democrat. I think he should if he wants to stand a chance. But what I can see happening, we've addressed this possibility on the show. Let's say he runs as a Republican. There is absolutely no way he is winning the primaries against the Rand Pauls and Ted Cruzes. It's not happening because those first primaries, maybe New Hampshire, but not in Iowa, not South Carolina, not Florida. There is no way. Those are swing states, and they're not lefty swing states like New Hampshire. And again, of course, South Carolina is a red state.
I could see him putting in a Mitt-like run, though. I mean, you could say the same thing about Mitt, but governed from the same kind of direction.
No, the demographics have changed too much since then. Mitt wasn't up against Rand Paul. He was up against Santorum and freaking Gingrich. I mean, Ron Paul was there, but his campaign was not remotely what Rand Paul's is going to be. And
would it be the same group of people, though? You would think he would just take the same mantle?
I would think he would have I think he will have a lot more people behind him. For one, he will have the evangelicals. Santorum took the evangelicals from Ron Paul. That is not going to happen this time around.
Supposedly Santorum wants to run again, so it'll happen again, but he won't win, so it won't matter.
Come on, my nickname for him was 2% Rick. It wasn't him. It was, first it was, wasn't Pawlenty, who was this? Backman was in there? There's a few. He was just the last evangelical left because these guys were, Gingrich and Romney were such terrible candidates. But now I feel like, over the last few years, Rand Paul has done everything possible to get the evangelicals behind him and to even kind of eat up some of the establishment votes. There's not going to be a Gingrich type, period. Christie will be the Romney, and Rand Paul will be the Ron Paul. And you might actually, I think Ted Cruz might also run, and then they'll join up at some point. Whoever's in front the other one will drop out and endorse the other.
Right, or be vice president.
Right. Well, for a cabinet position, whatever. So, depending on what they are. So, I can see where if those two, you have Rand and Ted Cruz, the way the Republican Party is nowadays, and the way the party is, there is no way Christie stands a chance against them. But what I can see happening is I can see the Democrats, because their primaries, that's going to be far more entertaining than the Republican, honestly. I just can't wait. I mean, remember how Hillary Clinton cried in 2000? What is it, 2008, right? Yeah. What she's going to do this time, she's going to slit her wrists?
I
Because
don't know.
there is no way that bitch is going anywhere. And you know how they talked about the hopeless split in the Republican primaries in 2012? Talking about someone parachuting in, like maybe John Kasich or Chris Christie? I can see Democrats doing that with Chris Christie, trying to tap him, or maybe like whoever does get the nomination, tapping him for vice president. Because this happened, this happened in the 60s with the last realignment, because they want to pick up those neocon votes. They want to pick up liberal, moderate Republicans that are not comfortable with a Ted Cruz or a Rand Paul.
I think I see a demand for something like that. Yeah, I keep hearing that demand out there for a moderate. I keep hearing that word moderate.
I don't think. See, I really don't think the demand is there, because the problem is this: once you pick up Christie, let's say it's, I don't know, let's say it's Hillary. I don't think it'll be her. I don't think she'll get past the primaries. Let's say Martin O'Malley from Maryland, and he picks up Christie for the vice presidency versus Rand Paul and someone else. Wouldn't be Cruz. I don't think they'd be president vice president, because they need someone more moderate themselves too. Now, you have that ticket. Once you pick up Christie, you lose all the union votes and all the union money. You lose the, kind of the far left. And that's a good 10, 15%. So now you just broke your base. And the Republican base, Rand Paul, no problem. Ted Cruz, no problem. So I think a lot of people are in denial about this. But yeah, I mean, if you had someone that's a complete evangelical psycho, like Rick Santorum, yeah, but that's not who's going to be in. That's not who's going to be running. I mean, they'll be in the primaries, but they won't get anywhere.
Yeah, perhaps. Well, we'll see.
Kind of my takeaway message here is, again, we've seen all sorts of marginalization, and I even feel like to an extent you're doing it now, Joe, about how libertarians and evangelicals are so tied together and they're going to go down with the same ship. But the reality is that we're seeing libertarians separate from evangelicals. The Republican establishment, the neocons, are pretty much dead. What's left of them are being forced out in the Democratic Party. And now libertarians are turning on evangelicals and saying, you know what, fuck you too. And I'll tell you why this does not bode well for the Democratic establishment. Because I've had this argument with Democrats, and from progressives to more conservative Democrats, over and over and over. They start attacking the Tea Party. Oh, the Tea Party's evil, and they're crazy, and they're extremists. And I'm like, okay, what about them? And they're attacking me. They're calling me these names when they're calling the Tea Party these names. So, okay, what's the problem? Oh, well, they're warmongers and they're corporatists, and they're like, no, actually, they won the primaries and threw those guys out. They're in your party now. Oh, well, yeah, okay, I guess you're right. Oh, they're crazy evangelicals, and they want to invade women's uteruses and ban gay marriage, and they're bigots. And like, well, you could say some of that is true about the evangelical side, but the problem is they're all octogenarians. So in another 10 years, they'll die? And all these libertarian kids, all these teenagers and kids in their early 20s that are just joining the voting cycle, they're all libertarians. They're not evangelicals. And they're not progressives. You want to claim they're progressives, but they're not. Because and really a big reason for that is they're involved. They understand politics. They vote. And progressives have no organization. So they're like, well, who are we going to vote for? There isn't really a far-left Democrat, but hey, that Ron Paul is looking pretty good. It's looking better than anyone else out there. So when we get rid of this last barrier of evangelicals, and it's just natural attrition, and it's already happening. We already showed you with Cuccinelli we will do that. And it's my libertarian-leaning Republican like Rand Paul, or even Gary Johnson, versus your establishment bitch Hillary that's guilty of virtually every constitutional crime we have a law for. What are you going to do? What is going to be your argument? There's no warmongering. There's no corporatism. There's no psycho-evangelical fundamentalist against gay rights crap. What are you going to have left? Because I got everything. I could write books about your Hillary. And you don't have a far-left candidate. See, I think the Democrats...
Unless Elizabeth Warren runs.
I don't see that. She's just... Where's she been?
Why else would she be in Senate, though?
Where's she
been?
See.
We'll see.
Joe, where's she been?
Maybe she's laying low and kind of testing the waters. I don't know. We'll see. I'm just saying unless. But it's like, you could argue, where was Wendy Davis before a year ago?
Well, that's a state. That's
sometimes it takes an issue.
Presidency, they start out earlier than the governors.
But my point being is sometimes it takes an issue.
You do have a point. But I would think almost, who's the guy? I always forget his name, Julian Castro.
She's got a name, by the way. She does. People know who she is.
She does. But I don't see her, if she runs against Rand Paul. Now, that would be a cool race. That would. Yeah. But she's not going to pick up the center. The center will go for Rand Paul in that election. Trust me.
I disagree.
For one, Rand's a better politician than her.
The one thing I heard that might sink her, and actually I was disappointed, is that she supports the drug war.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Well, actually, that might be good.
Yeah, it's kind of establishment.
Pick up some neocons who are against Rand Paul because he's against the drug war.
She actually has some mainstream things. She's not just...
I know she's not just a progressive. But the thing is, right, what I'm saying is, we're talking about establishment Democrats here. These attempts to marginalize the rising libertarianism, as everything that's Republican that libertarians despise, has a very, very short half-life. By 2016, it's going to be libertarians versus Democrats. I mean, they're not going to be like my kind of libertarians or Gary Johnson libertarians or Harry Brown libertarians. They're going to be Rand Paul. I wouldn't even call Ted Cruz libertarian. Gary, these guys that are kind of libertarian-leaning Republicans. And, I have a love-hate relationship with them. But how the fuck is any Democratic establishment turd going to take them on? Now, I understand there's people who have reservations, but we're talking about swing votes-wise. We're talking about swing states. It's not happening. There's no way. And the Democratic Party will go down in flames the same way the Republican Party, I'm talking about the establishment, went down in flames with Bush Jr. No matter what they do, no matter how hard they tantrum and pretend there's no scandals and flat out lie, you see the pattern here, right? The same thing happened toward the end of Bush's term.
Nice, we'll find out. It might be the albatross.
It'll be interesting.
All right, that's a good note to wrap up on, I believe.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for listening. We do have an announcement for you. If you haven't been already, by the time the show is released, please go to www.edgeofchaospodcast.com. We have a brand new professionally designed website that you'll be happy to look at. If you like my postings on Facebook, if you enjoy reading my writing, it's all there. Every post is reposted there. All our older podcasts are there, and it's basically being rebuilt by professionals, so it's for your viewing and listening pleasure. So we will welcome you there. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you also. Yeah, got a lot of changes coming up, so keep an eye out for it. And I'm Joe Ryan for Neurotoxin. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening, Edge of Chaos. We can be found on Facebook at facebook.com/The Edge of Chaos. Also, our website is at edgeofchaospodcast.com. That's edgeofchaospodcast.com. Neurotoxin's blog can be found at neurotoxins with an S, fyg.blogspot.com. My blog is joeryansworld.blogspot.com. For Neurotoxin, I am Joe Ryan. Thank you for listening to Edge of Chaos.
If I've learned anything from the last year and a half, it's quite simply that we don't know what we're doing anymore. You know? Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, all hit by this huge storm, and the U.S. government watched it as if it were a made-for-TV movie. Holy shit, I didn't know it was on tonight. Where'd they get all the extras and those special effects? They're spectacular. The man who took the brunt of the blame was Michael Brown. Michael Brown was the head of FEMA. FEMA, I always thought was a bone here in your ass. Coccyx, FEMA, hoo-da-ha, whatever it is. And the job that prepared Michael Brown for FEMA was he was the head of the Arabian Horse Association. You can see the connection there. Not even a great fiction writer could come up with that. He ran horse shows, and he was fired from that job. He ran horse shows. Anybody in this room can run a horse show. You'll be drunk for 3 days and vomiting at will. You can run a horse show. I know because I used to go to horse shows. Not of my own volition. I had a girlfriend, and her sister was an equestrian. Equestrian, by the by, that's the gayest word in the English language. As a matter of fact, I thought Brokeback Mountain should have been called Two Equestrians. All you need to run a horse show is the ability to say, next.